for the next sort of 10 minutes or so, just really want to spend a little bit of time reflecting on the role that research can play in helping the council's policy work. And I'm going to ask colleagues to introduce themselves if we go down the line.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Pam Johnson and I am Head of Culture Programmes at Leeds City Council. The definition of that changes on a daily basis, but today it means that I look after our culture strategy, our cultural investment programmes, and manage our relationship with the Year of Culture, Leeds 2023.
Hi, and I'm Polly Cook. I'm the Chief Officer for Climate, Energy and Green Spaces, which has been mentioned. It's quite wide-ranging, so I do a lot of policy work around climate and air quality, but we do a lot of delivery as well around things like our district heating network, building retrofit, things like energy strategy. We buy the energy for the council. We do the planned maintenance for the council, also have responsibility for bereavement services, 2 zoos and a farm, as well as all the green spaces in the city. And things like biodiversity net gain. So obviously a lot of the food things, a lot of the talk about green spaces and things have been really interesting for me today.
Hi everyone, I'm Fiona Bolam and I'm the Head of Economic Policy at Leeds City Council, and I have responsibility for the Leeds Inclusive Growth Strategy, which is the city's economic strategy, as well as sort of general economic policy, and economic analysis, our relationship with businesses, and certain projects that deliver on inclusive growth, including one that's trying to get sort of public health colleagues and economic colleagues to link closer together around trying to get good jobs, better jobs for people in our communities with our anchor organisations.
Thanks, everyone. So to kick us off, I'm going to stick with Fiona then. So,
okay.
Fiona, do you want to just talk a little bit about the role that research plays in the local authorities' work?
Yes, of course, that's fine. Thank you, Mike. So I think research is really, important, and that relationship with universities around it. It connects us with our local residents, actually really helping to understand them, what they want, what they need, and how we can help to fulfil that. And, generally around our decision making, it's, make sure that what we put forward is actually based on something real. It's a huge part of that. Good research helps us think through our policy priorities and development and help develop those ideas and just to, again, build our understanding. But also, and I'm thinking in particular when we're linking to sort of universities as well, helping us test those new innovative ideas, something different, and thinking about the future, which we don't always have time to actually do. We might have an idea, but we might wish to test it and get some of that real solid academic grounding that comes with it. And it helps us build up that evidence base so we can make the case, whether that be to government or within the region, about things that are important to us and why. It's actually, again, it's built on solid foundations. And I think where I've worked, I just wanted to sort of flag one area where I've worked. So I worked with the University of Leeds Business School to help us think through measures around inclusive growth. It was something that we did do a couple of years ago, but it helped pave the way for other future work. We sat down and went through what's important to people about being able to change their lives. So it's rooted in the people of Leeds. We did end up with this massive long list of indicators, which is about 320, which sounds huge, but actually that does tell you all these different things. And we were then able to use that work when we went on to work with the social progress imperative to develop the social progress index for Leeds. We already had a lot of groundwork through that research and through those links to be able to say, actually, we do know what this is, and then to find the right data that helped us move that work on.
Thanks. We've got a real commitment as a local authority, and this programme is a crucial part of it. It's about trying to get more research active sort of across the piece and to really embed evidence-based research into what we do. Pam, Polly, anything to add to what Fiona said, or do you want to maybe share some examples from your areas of expertise of where you've used research to improve outcomes?
I'm in absolute accord with everything that Fiona's just said. I'd summarise really the value of research to our work as understanding change and growth. It helps us to understand not just the sectors that we work with, but actually the world in which those sectors kind of really operate, which is ever evolving, ever changing. It enables kind of change and policy making, informs kind of just, as Fiona said, really making the case. And growth is something that we shouldn't miss out as well. We're really lucky to have Anna Kime placed with our team currently, and previously we've had a placement from the Leeds Cultural Institute placed with the team. And because, I mean, we are all in such a busy world. We're all incredibly busy, especially post-COVID. But actually having working closely with research and with researchers actually enables our personal growth as well. Our personal professional development kind of really evolves just through just changing that work environment. So it brings, I think, multiple benefits, both in terms of context, but also personal growth too. Oh, and an example of research, because I love this, and this is particularly kind of cultural. So one of our ambitions for the city is to establish a national poetry centre. So though my background is the arts, it's performing arts, not literature or poetry. And so I needed to develop my understanding, and the council needed to develop its understanding of the writing sector and opportunities and challenges for that sector in the city. So we commissioned some research relatively recently to understand who our writing sector is, how do we work more closely with them, and how might they benefit from a poetry centre really in the city. And the results of that research are pending. So look forward to getting that research, but more confident commissioning that work, knowing that the council kind of operates in this way around collaboration and research.
Thanks, Pam. Polly?
So I'm going to give some really practical examples. Some go back a little bit of time, but are still in place. So led on the work that we did around the clean air zone and how we clean up the air quality across the city. And one of the most challenging parts of that was looking at the standards we had for vehicles. And actually the government had set a standard, and based on research from the university, we didn't go with what the government recommended, and we actually pushed for a higher standard for our taxi and private hire fleet. That's been adopted in other places across the country as well as here now. It means we've got one of the greenest fleet. It was a really difficult conversation with the trade, and actually because we had independent research to back that up, and we could show the financial benefits to the trade, actually we managed to land that, and the university actually supported us through that consultation process as well as doing the actual research. So that's a really practical example that's changed the way that we operate. Another practical example is the work we've done around sort of our tree strategy. So we, working with the university again, university monitored our tree canopy cover, looked at actually what the potential was and where we could practically set the target. They also looked at actually when we have to cut trees down because they've died or for whatever other reason, actually what is a true replacement policy, and what carbon are we losing in that, and what would we have to do to genuinely replace that. So that's another really good example. And I think, for me, the food strategy has been probably one of the best examples of where there's been absolute collaboration. And you only have to look at the number of research projects around food and the amount of people that have been involved in developing our food strategy, working in our working groups, putting various different bids together, some successful, some not, the sort of different master students, interns, research fellows. That's been a really good example of where, the council really wanted to drive something forward, and actually the university has just got absolutely behind us and helped us to do that. So
thanks, Polly. Yeah, I mean, loads of really good examples. We'll try and leave a little bit of time for questions at the end, but I'm really mindful we're on a very tight schedule. So I'm going to just move us on slightly to reflecting on this programme specifically, really. And at the very start of the morning, I sort of questioned the presenters in terms of how you found the experience. I mean, Pam and Polly's friends, but starting with Pam, you've done really, really well out of this first round of projects. Loads of focus on culture, as we've heard. Just wondering if you had any reflections on the experience of participating, and particularly, I suppose, any key takeaways to bear in mind as we very quickly run into another round of projects that will be funded through the same route shortly, and hoping to develop those areas of research interest as our process going forward for how the council and the university look to work really closely together.
I'll start with my takeaway. Not being an academic, I think one of the things that I really need to find and to remember is discipline. It's being in this world kind of research collaboration. It can feel sometimes like a kid in a sweet shop, that where the world is kind of really opened up to you, and you've got so many questions, so many things that you want to find out. But actually having discipline around structuring that and working with a researcher kind of really enables that. I think is really key and really important. I really value, I think, all of the research collaborations that we've heard about today and more that's going on around the city, and our broader relationship with the university, particularly given where we are in relation to Leeds 2023, where we're thinking about the legacy of the year, what the future horizon looks like for culture by 2030, what a refreshed culture strategy might look like, really for the city in 2024, but really critically for us, and always, it's, it's that somebody said it, and so what? What benefit does culture bring to people, to place, to productivity? I'm on message, Fiona. What difference does it make really in our lives? And we know anecdotally that it makes a huge difference. A world without culture, I think, would be almost insufferable. But it's how do we measure that? What are the tangible impacts of having culture in this city?
Thanks, Pam. Holly?
I think from my perspective, it's always, I'm quite a practical person, so it's always about the impact and the difference it makes. And, I think that sort of point about having a bit of time to step back and, I've always got things I want to do and want to change, but quite rarely have the time to do some of them. So I think having that additional resource who can really reflect, but also I think that point about developing us and our staff to think a bit differently and to look at the world from a different perspective, I think is really valuable. I've enjoyed the fact that we've had Neil embedded, and I'm glad that he survived the experience and came away quite positively. But I think that it has been quite good in the sense that it's more part of a team, but still with that element of independence. So I think for me, will always be about actually the so what, like you say, the impact and what have we made as a difference, and actually how have you helped staff to develop to also be able to do some of that thinking themselves as well going forward.
Thanks, Holly. I mean, so comments point is a really interesting. It was great to hear Sarah asking about it before, and we've got Abby's going to come in and join my team from September to help us really develop some of the overall programme and how we do this as a way of working a little bit more. So I think there's loads of routes we can explore. Just to finish up, and with a little bit of a plug, I suppose, for that next round of Research England projects and that refreshed set of areas of research interest, I'll come back down the line of, what are the just one or two key things you think that are on your agenda, Fiona, to really explore with the university as part of this next round? Where do we go from here, I suppose?
Okay, so anything that's really going to help us navigate some of the real challenges that we've got coming forward. And obviously I'm thinking about this from the economic perspective, but helping us to think through some of those big challenges. And the two that I'll pull out, one is around sort of net zero and the climate emergency, but how do we look at that through that economic lens? What does that actually mean for our businesses and our places? Actually, how are we going to be able to do more and be positive around some of that? The other one I want to flag up is around AI, actually, because it's already here and the pace of change is only getting quicker. And what does actually that mean for us? Where do we have some strengths and weaknesses? So we already know that that's already been applied in things like call centres. So how many jobs potentially across Yorkshire could we be looking at losing if some of that comes in? And don't forget, they're entry-level jobs for a lot of people in this region. But the pace of change is huge. And I know that some of that's global, but actually it's global, but it's happening here and it's local. And I'd like us to sort of to be able to respond and to be able to think through some of those big challenges.
Thanks, Fiona. Holly?
So I'm going to come at a completely different angle to normal, so not food. Green spaces, I think one of the big challenges I've seen in the last few months from taking that on is linked to that sort of antisocial behaviour and actually making people value green spaces, and how we end up in a position where it's a bit of a sort of vicious circle, that the more antisocial behaviour you get, the more other parts of the community move away from it. And how do we kind of reverse that cycle even? Yeah. And also, there's been the research around about violence against women and girls and how that works in park design and things. So I think all that, looking at our green spaces more kind of at a higher level about how we do the design, but how we bring communities back into those areas that are struggling more, would be one area. I'm also interested, which is around like the conservation. Like I mentioned, we've got the sort of farm and zoos. And I think we don't think very much at the moment with the university around those links in conservation and linking back to our green spaces. And I did have one other and it's gone, so go to Pam and it'll come back to me.
I'll share one. It's aspirational, uber ambitious idea, and it's taking levelling up and really turning it on its head. I think the way that it should have been, and what methodologies kind of really need to be in place to to empower local people to inform their own lives, to shape their own spaces, really where they live. So it's that interpretation of levelling up, I think, is a big one for me. And the other biggie, I'm glad you didn't mention it, Fiona. So there's Fiona's leading the work that the council's doing on the Social Progress Index. And one of the challenges we've been set and one of the solutions we've been finding is the answer to that question around whether culture or creativity can be an indicator of quality of life. And if so, how do we measure that?
Okay, let's come back to me. The other one, which is a bit kind of wider, is around sort of behavioural change. So it could link to food, it could link to the climate emergency. But actually, how do we better engage with people and do that sort of nudge behaviour? We do a lot of work with Louise talking about kind of psychology and nudging, and but I think we've done the work around food, but I think it's more general. We do lots of PR about the different things we're doing, but the amount of times I go to a room and people say, "Oh, are you doing anything on climate?" So how do we better engage with people and also, without scaring everyone to death, actually get people to understand the size of the challenge we're facing? For me, that if someone can crack that, I'd be forever grateful.
I mean, that's a challenge to leave on. I mean, thanks all of you. And just from the presentations we've heard today as well, aligned to some of those questions, you can already see areas to potentially take some of these things further. Particularly struck by some of the stuff we heard about green spaces and potentially playing into that piece around how belonging plays into some of what Polly's talked about around some of those challenges that we have. So thanks again. I hope that's useful. We're all really happy to talk outside of this separately. But yeah, thank you very much. I'll hand back to Juliet.